Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Soo, your East Oakland advocate. Well, it's summertime again, and like last year, for the second year in a row, looks like we're going to have red tide. And the red tide is currently just outside of where EB Mud Processing, the treatment plant, SD1, Special District 1 for East Bay Municipal Utilities District, and that's where all the water, your sewer waters, uh, go to for treatment before it gets discharged into the bay. Whereas the storm drains themselves, storm drains do not go to the waste treatment plants. They just go bailed directly into the bay, and so that's why it's real important that you don't throw oil or toxic chemicals into the storm drains, because it goes directly into the bay, which affects the fish, the invertebrates, and the sea life, the bay life itself. But second year in a row. Last year, back in June, if you remember, we had a huge die-off in Lake Merritt because of red tide. And people are asking, well, what's going on? Why are we having all these red tides suddenly? Well, what's happening is that we have all over the Bay Area a lot of illegal grows going on. And so those illegal grows are dumping their hydroponic waters and their waters that have high nitrogen, phosphorus, and calcium, magnesium, and a lot of different chemicals. These are hazardous to the bay because they increase the likelihood. There's more food for algae to feed on and to process, and that's what's causing this. All of these illegal grows, they have to put the water, they have to dump the water somewhere. And most of the time, they're either going to dump it in the toilet, down a sink, or it could even go into the floor drains, because a lot of these large warehouses that are being used as illegal grows, they just simply dump the water on the floor and let it go down the storm drain, and they don't care. But then that's also DEA and Alameda County Sheriff's Department are also monitoring a lot of the water that goes into the sewer systems, and they're able to track where illegal grows are, and so that's how they're finding a lot of the illegal grows. No matter what happens, you have to throw the water somewhere. That water that's loaded, I mean loaded with chemicals, nitrogen, phosphorus, and a whole lot of other chemicals that the plants need, or that all plants need, to get energy and create growth. So anyway, this is again second year in a row, and it's close to shore, and so while we had a great flushing of the bay, and this really delayed it. And there's a couple of factors, reason why the red tide blooms are coming in so late this year, is because number one, it's been a cooler year than normal. The waters haven't gotten up to 60 degrees plus. It's typically in the bay, in your shoreline areas, your waters that are less than 18 inches deep, or actually less than 3 feet deep, can actually attain 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's more than sufficient for algae to grow. And then having the water loaded with tens of thousands of gallons of these fertilizers that are just being dumped. And EB Mud is not to blame on this. EB Mud cannot treat the nitrogen in a way that would be positive, where it neutralizes it, because it varies. It varies so much, and it varies from minute to minute, varies from hour to hour. And so it is literally impossible to neutralize the nitrogen and the phosphorus that are ending up in the bay. And the area that is being affected is all uh, towards the North Bay, because that's where the flow tends to go. We have a lot of flow, and it circles. The tide pushes things north, and then the water coming down from the mountains, from the Sierras through Sacramento, through the American River, Sacramento River, San Joaquin, are all flushing this way from the Delta down through Suisun, through San Pablo Bay, and then out through the gate. But it swirls. There's a circular motion, and so because of the discharge by EB mud, a lot of the chemicals are just being spread along the coastal area from Emeryville all the way up through Albany, and so that creates a real hazard. And then also we have a lot of people where storm drains dump into Lake Merritt, and there are a lot of the old storm drains. You can see them around Brooklyn Basin, not Brooklyn Basin, but Brooklyn Avenue, there off of Lakeshore. If you go down to the water, you'll actually see one of the egresses for the street sewer, and it dumps directly into Lake Merritt. And last year we saw a lot of fish die in Lake Merritt, a lot of bass, a lot of anchovies, smelt. We even saw sturgeon, unfortunately, and sturgeon is already a protected species, or semi-protected species, because it is on the endangered list, kind of endangered list. There's no shortage of them yet, but the numbers are definitely dwindling, and sturgeon are very, very slow growing. And so every sturgeon that we lose is detrimental to the ecosystem. And we need to get hold of this. The good thing is that Alameda County Sheriff's Department, DEA, and also the market is influencing the cannabis industry. Here in the Bay Area, we're seeing a big drop off because, number one, there's no profit left in it anymore. If you're not familiar with what's going on the 420 scene, cannabis, wholesale prices from growers have dropped to nearly a point where they're not making any profit, and a lot of people are abandoning those grow houses and those grow operations, or moving them out of California, because, number one, the risk. Thieves are breaking into grow warehouses with guns and robbing places. So there's that. Then there's the high cost. And then now, believe it or not, good prime 420 cannabis wholesale now is down to $1,000 a pound or less. We've been seeing as little as $100 a pound now, and on average $800 is a pretty typical wholesale price right now. And so that's why there's no profit in it like in before. Whereas before, you would be able to make $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, even $5,000 for that single pound of 420. And that's not the case anymore. Even shipping it back east isn't working, isn't doing it anymore. And so a lot of cannabis growers are going out of business. And that's leaving a lot of warehouses full of equipment. And we're seeing equipment showing up in illegal dumping all over the city. And in fact, a grow house that used to be close by here, they even shut down. They shut down and went out of business. I'm part of a new management team now in a building, and what we're doing, we're setting up and planning aquaculture. And so we're going to be growing food. We're going to be a full 100% legal and licensed operation growing live food. And so we're going to be also investing in vertical horticulture. And so there's a lot of exciting things happening right now. But the only down part is that the price of buildings and sites are still terribly expensive. And so it's going to take a little while for those prices to come down for these unreasonable and greedy realtors that are asking. Just a couple of months ago, I priced out a warehouse real close, and they wanted $1.288 million for only 4,200 square feet. That's insane. And how the price got there was because all the past illegal growers that are now leaving and picking up, they signed a lot of leases, and so they walked away from leases, leaving equipment behind because the equipment isn't worth any money now. The newer stuff coming out, newer hydroponics, new LEDs, new heating systems, and everything are much more efficient rather than using the old stuff. And like I said, it's ending up on the street. But again, a lot of the illegal grow operations are going out of business. And so that we're seeing a change. Last year, the red tide started showing up towards the end of June because it got really warm, and there was an overabundance of nitrogen and phosphorus in the local waters that were being dumped. And so this year, we're just starting to see the formation of the red algae blooms along the shoreline from Emeryville all the way up through Albany. And so if you wanted to see what's happening, you can go out along the shoreline and actually see it. And you may even be able to see it if you go out to the Costco there in Richmond, El Cerrito, right next to the dog park. You might be able to see a lot of the red tide. And also with the red tide, please make sure that your dog doesn't go in the water with red tide. It can make them very sick, or it can be deadly to them. And I've seen it time and time again. It's not a time to play fetch with your pupper out there at the water shoreline, especially along there with the red tide blooms in progress. So just giving you a heads up, folks. There are some changes, good changes coming, which is 420 illegal grows are diminishing. So that's going to help with reducing some of the criminal activity and the crimes and the holdups and robberies that are going on. And dispensaries. Right now, there are very few dispensaries left because they either been held up so many times, or the cost of doing business isn't there anymore. There's no profit. And that's what a lot of dispensaries are finding, because the taxes are nearly 50% of what you buy. So it's ridiculous. The politicians and our so-called leaders screwed up a really good opportunity. They should have let the industry grow and rather than go about the way that it did. But a lot of this information comes from baykeepers. Baykeepers is the environmental watchdog for the bay, and they see it, and they also say that, you know, the nitrogen and the phosphorus that are being emitted from EB mud pipes back into the bay, the discharge treated water, there's virtually nothing that they can do with the nitrogen there. trying to neutralize it because it's so varied, and it has to be a consistent so that things can be programmed and timed, and the proper chemicals to neutralize those fertilizers can be added because they can't be filtered out. And so chemicals have to be added to the water to neutralize them. And like I said, the big rains over this past winter really helped because it dropped the bay salinity to nearly all fresh water, except for a few deep areas. If the salinity dropped below 1.0 gravity, and that's not very often. And so the cold weather also has slowed the tide. So we're definitely seeing some positives here, but there's still a long ways to go, and there's still a big risk of a big die-off of fish. It's less likely right now because we're into midsummer and heading to fall, and so we're not having the migratory fish like jack smelt, anchovies come into the bay where they normally would hang out and feed on the phytoplankton, the algae, and so we're not seeing that as much, but tens of thousands of gallons of illegal fertilizers being dumped into the bay is the cause of this, and that comes from the cities and counties not doing their jobs of keeping track of the illegal grows, because Oakland actually has a cannabis department of the police department where they're supposed to regulate and verify and also cite those illegals and grows and shut them down, but they're not doing it. So Oakland again is not doing their job. But today's red tide is a big concern because we're coming up to the warmest part of summer right now. That means the shoreline waters are going to get much warmer, and that's going to accelerate the red algae blooms. So we don't know what we can do about that, but we know that something has to be done. This is the second year in a row. We don't know how bad it's going to be, but typically we saw a lot of it up in the Delta, up in Discovery Bay. You're not hearing so much about that. It is happening, but you're not hearing as much because the grows aren't taking off like they used to, because there's no profit in it anymore. So thanks for joining me today. Hope you aren't affected by the red algae blooms that are taking place along the East Bay shorelines. Keep your dogs safe. It can make you sick. Stay out of the water if you see it. It's not a place to go let your children or your pets play. Thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.